When you look at creators who you love or who are really successful, like they have some kind of a shtick. Like whether that's like a tagline that they say at the beginning of their video, or whether it's just like how they speak and their voice pattern and their cadence, or just like how they laugh at themselves. Like there are creators coming to my mind as I give all of these examples. And it's like, I love them because they like lean into that. And so they are really themselves.
Effective branding can be the thing that sets your business apart. Welcome back to the Marketing Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, Maurice A. Davis. And if you're a small business owner and you're looking to figure out how to brand your business, I got a treat for you. If you're a returning visitor, welcome back to the village. And if you're new, welcome to the family and enter into Victory Village. On today's show, we're going to be talking more about how we can break down the pieces of branding with our special guest. She went from an exhausted, burnt out, and creatively tapped teacher and wedding planner to harnessing her superpower of teaching to help business owners get past the struggle of setting themselves apart. She's a business coach, copywriter, and she makes outstanding TikTok content. Mollie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so today's fun. I have an interesting take on branding. It wasn't until we had a show with a gentleman named Jason, and he said I'm the anti-branding brander. So I have this weird battle and balance with branding and business coaching and copywriting, right? From the perspective of I think sometimes we can put the cart before the horse. So before we really get into like any type of questions that I have for you specifically, talk to us a little bit about your branding and business coaching and copywriting philosophy. Kind of roll that. I know those are three separate things, but let's roll them up and talk a little bit about your philosophy of how you work with business owners.
Sure. So my biggest thing is that I do not want to overwhelm business owners more than they already are. We always feel like we are pulled in so many directions. We have so many different things that we need to be focusing on, putting money into, putting energy into, and it can feel so overwhelming. So my philosophy is always just to work with my clients to figure out what is your end goal. Okay, how can we figure out what high leverage activities we can implement into your business strategy so that you can get there as fast as you possibly can without being super overwhelmed? Because I always say, like, I can create a strategy for you where you're posting 3 times a day on 7 different platforms, 7 days a week. But if you're not going to do it, it doesn't matter. So how can we look at what you actually have the capacity to do, where you have the capacity to outsource things, and how can we strike a balance there that will get you to where you want to go the quickest without you just being like, screw it, I don't want to do any of it. And like, you do it. It's kind of like working out where you're like, I'm going to do it. And you do it for like 30 days and then you fall off the wagon. Then you feel guilty you're not doing it. Content creation and marketing feels the same way for a lot of business owners. So I try to help them be like, let's make small sustainable changes. Can we add an apple into your diet? Can we add one video into your week? Like, how can we do this in a way that really feels good for you?
Yeah. So I like that analogy that marketing and content creation is like going to the gym, right? Like the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Exactly.
I had a friend of mine tell me, I was presenting at a business conference this week, and the topic was how to create content without feeling like you're always creating content in this overwhelming loop. And he's like, so you're going to teach people how not to make like an overwhelmingly amount of content, but I always see content from you. And I was like, that's interesting because I don't feel like I produce a ton of content, right? And you talked about this idea of like high leverage activities, AKA let's add an apple into your diet. What's a few like common apples that you see for the clients that you've worked with that really kind of make that oomph?
So I feel like the first step in kind of like before you even create the content, you need to narrow down on what your message is. And that is my bread and butter. That is what I love to help people do, because that really is the thing that sets you apart. You can have 2 realtors that are both selling houses to the same type of family in the same type of town. But like, what is your unique take on that? What is your energy around that? And then how can we take that and put that into your message? So once you figure out what your message is, then creating content kind of like flows out of you because you know what you're passionate about. It's almost like you've tapped into this well of like, here's who I am, here's my voice, here's what I believe in. And it's kind of like when you can connect those dots, what you want to say just flows right out of you. Like it's so fun to see with my clients in sessions where we're like talking through, I'm asking them questions, they're kind of, going on, and I boil it down into a sentence and I'm like, here you go. Here's your, your soundbite for that. And they're like, oh my gosh. But it's so cool, like what comes through. You're like, when something comes out of a client's mouth and they're just like, it's da 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 da. I'm like, oh my gosh, you can just feel it in the room of like,
Yeah.
oh, like that's your message, that's your tagline. Like it's so good at plans. But when you get that, then you're kind of like, okay, cool. That kind of like gives you this energy and the momentum to then go out, take those little bits and pieces and create content from them. But if you're like, at least for me, and I know for a lot of my clients, when you feel like I have to go out and create content, well, what am I going to say? I don't know what I want to say. That's the hardest thing. It's like translating what's in your head, getting it to come out of your fingers or out of your mouth. Like it's challenging for people. So when you can kind of like back up and say, okay, here's my message and here's what I really want to talk about, the next pieces of it become a little fun because it's like, I know the subject. So
Yep.
now how can we do this creatively? Also taking into account your personality to create that content.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear you talk about like the differences between two realtors. Actually, you did a TikTok last month talking about the realtors that do
Oh
the yeah,
yeah.
the comedy guys. I can't think of their page name right now, but they definitely stand out, right?
Mhm.
And theirs is like selling homes with a sense of humor or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. And it does make a huge difference. So if somebody's not, and what I think one of the challenges here that I see with most small business owners is like there are so many moving parts to this whole marketing, branding, content creation piece that it can be challenging, especially before we got on the call, we talked about like business owners don't necessarily understand the difference between these two, but they don't know what this is, but they kind of understand what this is. So let's talk more about this to make it clear to them. But like if we were to really boil it down, like there are some nuanced differences between even like between you and I, like I would
Mhm.
consider myself a marketing strategist or
Right.
like a content strategist, right? Not necessarily a business coach or a branding or a brand strategist, right? And so, like, how does someone be able to get to a place where they can create a message that may not be perfect, but is sufficient enough for them to move forward, knowing that like they may not be in a position to hire all the people that they really need in order to build the foundation that really makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, there's obviously like a ton of great resources. There's a ton of great books. Building a story brand is obviously like a great place to start,
Yeah.
especially when you're looking at your messaging. So I would say really you have to look at it. Like I look at it in kind of three phases. There's like you, meaning the entrepreneur,
Yep.
them, meaning their client, and then together what you guys do. So you're really looking at like the them piece, the audience piece. Okay, what are they struggling with? What are they looking to create? Like why can they not create those things? How are
Yeah.
they feeling? Like all of those emotional things. Like that's if you break down your messaging into kind of like these three sections, then it will
Hmm.
give you, the baseline that you can to go out and start. And the other thing is that you really want to, pay attention to what people are saying because if you're kind of like taking a guess, you can go out, start with a message, take a guess, and then tweak it. Your message is like a living document. It's always changing because your business is always changing. You may work with a client that you thought you liked and you're like, nope, nope, don't like them. Need a new client. So you tweak your messaging to adjust for that kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
again, it's like the gym. It's like it's never done, especially once you kind of like see certain results and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna tweak what I'm doing to get a different result. And it is that like 1 millimeter correction in your messaging that can land you somewhere different, which again is why you can have two realtors doing the same thing and they end up in different places. So yeah, you're looking at the them piece, you're looking at you. Okay, why are you the person that should help them? What objections might they have to working with someone like you? Looking at all of these things and just kind of like you don't have to put all of this in one TikTok. You can take all of the things that I just mentioned and take a piece of it and put it in a TikTok, or take two pieces of it and put it in a TikTok. It's really just about like the big picture of your content strategy as a whole. It's not about one individual piece. You can take all of the pieces and boil it down into one little TikTok, but not every piece of content needs to have all the different aspects of your messaging into it. So, again, looking at StoryBrand, looking at different resources like that can be super helpful, but really it's about getting to know who your client is. And if you want to start at like the most basic level, figure out what they are struggling with and how that is making them feel. If you just talk about that, you
Yeah.
can get people. If you can nail that, like that's all you need to start with. Obviously, it helps to have more as you grow and things, but if you can just do that and you can do it well, you'll be okay.
Yes, but how do you do that?
So for me, it really is like listening to my clients, listening to my audience, having, discovery calls with people, things like that. You start to see there are patterns of what comes up. Now, if you're like, I'm new, I don't have an audience, I don't have clients, then what do? Go look at someone who's 10 steps ahead of you. Go look at someone with an audience who's talking in their comment section. Go look at, I've heard, this is a great tip, but if maybe there's a book like Storybrand or something like that where you have clients who may be similar to the clients that you want to work with.
Mhm.
What books are they reading? Go to the comment section and look at what people are saying. Oh my gosh, I struggled with X, Y, and Z before I read this book. It helped me solve this problem.
Yeah.
So it does take a little bit of research, but you can go to where the people are talking if the people aren't talking with you and look at what they're saying.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I just posted a TikTok. I think it was Sunday, doing the research that you're talking about right now, where I took Google Sheets and integrated Chat GPT into it to be able to kind of parse that research and speed that process up. And I share
Yeah,
that because going to the comments on Amazon is fantastic, but there's a lot of stuff to weed through. Like
yeah, there.
a lot. So if you can speed that process up a little bit, then I would highly encourage. But I definitely agree that going to places like Amazon, reading the comments, honestly, reading the table of contents of a lot of these books, you have to think about when you read it, what problem is this piece looking to solve?
Right.
Typically, like the bestseller books, they're there's some finagling of numbers,
Yeah.
but typically bestseller books are a good place to start to kind of look at it and go, okay, what problem were they looking to solve? And if this book has 6,000 reviews, there's probably something there worth kind of talking about. I prefer doing it with older books,
Yep.
pre 2000s, early 90s, and before. Those books tend to have really good problem focuses if you can reverse engineer their table of contents. But
That's great too.
you made a comment about getting their message right, and then you mentioned something about their voice. And I think this is a great segue into the next piece of the conversation. What is the difference between my message and my voice?
Your message is what you say and your voice is how you say it. So again, you can have a very similar message to somebody else, but you're saying it in a completely different voice. They could have a really professional voice. You have a very informal and casual voice. It can be something stupid like, you swear, where somebody else is like, just very like buttoned up and polished. So
Yeah.
when you're thinking about this, there's all of these like layers. It's like, again, your message is what you say, your voice is how you're saying it. Then you kind of have the sales aspect like woven into that
Yep.
in terms of like, here's how you need to say it in order to sell. So it can feel overwhelming because you're like tapping your head, patting your belly, and like jumping on one foot as you're trying to like create this sales content. So really, again, like take the small bits and pieces, and it's kind of like muscle memory. Once you figure out what your voice is, and I think the best way to do that is figure out genuinely like how you talk to clients, because you don't want there to be a disconnect between how you're showing up on social media and then
Yeah.
somebody gets a discovery call and meets you and they're like, you're not what I thought at all. Like that incongruency can really cost you sales. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure that it's like you and like a really you-ier version of you when you're on social media. So when people do meet you, they're like, yes, this makes sense, you know? So
Yeah.
but once you figure out that voice, it just kind of naturally becomes how you speak and how your business speaks. And so it doesn't feel like as much work, where maybe like the sales messaging side of things has to be like, okay, this is how I'm thinking about this, and saying that.
Yeah. A more I love the a more you-ier version of you. In your videos over on TikTok, you talk a little bit about uh, channeling the energy that you want your client or customer to feel before you're creating your content. Uh, how do you determine kind of what key elements or key energy types that you want to have in your content or with your voice? Um, like remembering that, like I am trying to make a more you-ier version of me,
Right.
but when you start turning that dial up, like how do I keep from how do let me rephrase this question because it's getting messy. How do I how do I turn the dial up so that I can become a more you-ier version of me without distorting who I am?
That's a great question. And I think that comes with like balance and practice. I know that like I've swung certain ways and then I'm kind of like, you know, swung back the other way where it's like I need to have so much energy. And then I'm like, it's one facet of my personality to have like
Right.
cheerleader energy, but it's also facet of my personality to like be a little bit more like sarcastic and like laid back
Mm,
energy. So I think that there is like that can ebb and flow as you find your flow, but it also can ebb and flow a little bit in videos. You still want to be you and have that like consistent thread throughout your video, but you can almost like use whatever types of content you're creating or the idea behind your content and like have that dictate a little bit of how you're showing up. Again, you want there to be consistency, you want it to be you, but you really can use your content to show all the different sides of your personality and the different facets of you. Controversy is like always a fun one to play with because you're gonna get some attention. You need to be prepared for that.
oh yeah.
um, but I think that people like shy away from that because they're afraid of what happens on the other side of it. But
Yeah.
again, if you're showing up authentically as you and you do have an opinion that, may trigger some people, like
Yeah.
be sure that's the hill you're willing to die on. But like, and then if you can pull yourself out of it and be like, okay, I'm going to utilize this to get some eyes on my brand. I'm going to
Yep.
like basically put myself in front of the firing squad so that I can reach the people that I need to reach. Like I may take some, some shots as I'm doing it, but at the same time, like it could be worth it. So
Yes.
it's a gamble, but that can always be like a good way to do that too.
Absolutely. When Bud Light dropped their Mulvaney campaign, I did a couple videos on that, and
Mhm.
I took some shots.
Yeah. Oh, you will. You absolutely will. And it's, again, you've got to like be prepared for that. And if you know going into it and you can prepare yourself and be like,
Yeah,
this is going to happen. When it does
absolutely.
happen, you're like, you know, people on the internet, man.
Yeah, yeah. You were talking about oh, you were taking some program break method,
Yes. Yeah.
and you said that the I can't remember the name of your mentor, but she basically was like, if you are not offending some people, you're probably not kind of drawn that line, and nobody really knows where you stand on anything. Uh,
Yeah.
and that can be such a hard line to walk, right? Like,
Mhm.
how do I? So I take your opinion of it. Like, how do you determine the things you're going to share your opinion about, and the things that you're just like, I'm gonna leave that alone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so Break Method was it was an amazing course that I took. It was on emotional repatterning, which basically you look at the patterns that you have in your life that you have created and kind of how those are creating what you don't want in life so that you
Yeah,
can shift them to create what you do want. So
got
she
it.
had kind of basically said, if everybody likes you, you're doing something wrong. And the
Mm,
idea behind that is you're constantly chameleoning to other people because you're going to have like again facets of your personality that rub people the wrong way. But if you're
yeah,
constantly calculating and figuring out like I've got to make you like me and you like me and you like me, you're not actually acting in a way that's authentic to you. So when you want to figure out where that line is for you, again, if you're really passionate about what you're doing, there naturally will be things that come out that you're like, yes, this, like, I will plant my flag on this and say, entrepreneurs don't need to hustle and work 80 hours a week in order to, build a successful business.
yeah,
And there may be, other things that are like more politically motivated or stuff like that, that like, you feel in your gut and in your soul that you want to, speak out about. And you have every right to do that. Like, that is the beauty of where we are, where we live, and how we get to live our lives. But the backside of that is like, can you handle what will come from that? And it, people's penchant for wanting to cancel people is strong. So, you have to kind of you have to balance those things and really just tune into like, do I have the emotional bandwidth right now to deal with what may come on the other side of it? I mean, that's truly what it comes down to. If
yeah,
you're willing to like be like, this is an exercise in me toughening my skin and I'm willing to put myself out there because on the other side of this, the amount of people that I'm going to help is going to make it worth it, then go out and do it. And, put your phone away when you need to and go back into your real life where people love you and remember that like the internet is not necessarily real life and you'll be okay. And
yeah,
like, if you can't do that, that's okay too. You can still create a successful business. It's just, balancing and just having like, a come to Jesus talk with yourself of like, is there somewhere that I could be showing up more authentically? And is there somewhere that I should be speaking out where I'm not? And in your gut, you'll know.
yeah. Man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. The idea of, and especially as a business owner, I think sometimes you feel like you can't detach. It, even more so in the beginning. You're like, if I'm away from my phone and somebody calls and I don't answer, then I lose a customer. And it's like, maybe,
Right.
like,
Right.
maybe, but if you don't take that 2, 3 hours, you're not going to make it. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a scarcity mindset. And it's interesting. I heard a podcast the other day where the guy was talking about, okay, if you're at work, do you take a phone call from your family? But when you're with your family, do you take a phone call when you're like from work? And so essentially, like looking at that reality of like, what does my life look like and what am I really prioritizing and being honest with yourself?
yeah,
Because you can kind of like tip the scales too far one way and then look and be like, but the rest of my life doesn't look the way I want. So
yeah,
it's a balance. That's the entrepreneurial struggle.
yeah, absolutely. So, last question about the idea of your brand voice. Um, Talk to us a little bit about how does finding your brand voice and being consistent with that, how does that play into you being recognizable and then like building loyalty on platforms like TikTok?
So, when you look at creators who you love or who are really successful, like they have some kind of a shtick. Like whether that's like a tagline that they say at the beginning of their
Yeah,
video, or whether it's just like how they speak and their voice pattern and their cadence, or just like how they laugh at themselves. Like there are creators coming to my mind as I give all of these examples.
yeah,
And it's like, I love them because they like lean into that. And so they are really themselves. But it's because like the more we see stuff, the more we like stuff. So as we start to like see people do these things over and over, we're like, I like them. And
yep,
yes, we do, but also there's that like psychological principle that exists that tells us that we like them because we're more familiar with them. So
yeah,
even like I did a video the other day about, like your backgrounds, your clothing, your hair, like all of those things. Because as people are scrolling, they're scrolling so fast and their eyes, are picking up stuff quicker. So if you have kind of like the same things that visually will get people to stop the scroll because they recognize that it's you, like those things can actually be helpful to build consistency. It's all about like visual consistency where people can just kind of like recognize you. And again, as you're speaking and the way that you're speaking, that kind of stuff will do the same thing.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you unpacking that. I was listening to a book today by, I think it's Mike Michalowicz, the author of Profit First,
Yep.
and he
Great
wrote
book.
a book called Different, and he was talking about this idea that the speed in which our brain recognizes information is like half of the time it takes for us to blink, right? So the more familiar we are with an idea, the easier it is for us to process the information. So that aligns really well with what you're talking about right now. And it explains why when I do videos that talk about like shit you don't want to hear, people are like, yeah,
Right, right, right.
like you people are masochists. Like
Those negative hooks do really well sometimes, let me tell you.
they do. And you know what? When I use them, my page grows a lot faster. But I don't like being negative.
I know it's a hard balance to strike because people love the negative, man. They're just like
Yeah,
right onto that and hold on for dear life, and you're like, can we talk about happy things, please? Like,
yeah. Like oh my goodness, I don't. So yes, it definitely is a balance. But something else that I noticed on your page is you talk a lot about storytelling.
mm,
And even in like there was one where you're kind of breaking down like the key pieces that you need in your TikTok, and you showed like the hook, the story, and the other components. Uh, but like you told a story when you were about to talk about telling stories, and like I laugh because it's meta when people do
mm-hmm.
stuff like that, and it's pretty cool. So, how can storytelling techniques be used in order for us to create more compelling content?
Yeah, so it's storytelling is so so important. And doing that TikTok, I was like, I have to find a way to like do this as I'm doing it because my brain didn't naturally want to tell it in a story. And I was like, you can't
Yeah.
make a TikTok about telling stories when not telling a story in it.
Yeah.
So you do have to like think about that. But really what I like to do is think about like either clients or customers or even like stuff that happens to you in real life that you feel like your audience would like get some value from. Like instead of just making the point, think about, and you can even fake it. You can even make up a story like that, and you could be straight up about it. Like think about if you were a blank, blank, and blank. Like
Yep.
you can do that because our brains are programmed to think in stories. So it's kind of like if this is the way that your brain is naturally functioning, then why are you not creating content that aligns with that? Like it's if what you're saying is convoluted, if it's complicated, if it's unclear, people are going to be like, and swipe. Like they just don't have it. It burns a lot of calories in your brain, storybrand
Yes.
says, to make sense of things. So and most of us are like kind of lazy and brain dead when we're in a scroll hole, so we just want to like
Uh,
have it be easy, you know what I mean?
not kind
So
of.
yeah.
Definitely.
So you want to really think about like how you can organize your content in a way that you are giving that value, that you are pulling people in, that you are making it feel kind of like exciting or suspenseful. Like
Yeah.
even your hook essentially is opening a story loop. Like
Yes.
you wouldn't believe what happened to me today. I want to hear the rest of the story. My brain naturally gravitates towards that. So use your hooks to do that. You can, give examples. You can provide value to your audience and then give an example of, the point that you're making with a story of a client or a customer or whatever. But that can really make a huge difference. And the other thing is like that kind of like human element, especially really pulls people in. This is like people who don't have a lot of great pictures on their website of humans, and I'm like, there's no people on your website. Like, I'm not seeing myself. So
Yeah.
the more, like, really, story is a mechanism that you can use to help people see themselves in what you do and what you're saying, because if they can do that, then they're like, okay, I want to work with you because I can see that you can solve the problem that I'm having. So giving them the information through which to do that can be really important.
Mm. I love that you said the thing about people. By the way, your dog is adorable.
I know she has to be like right next to me in her little bed all the time. Also, I'm not barking. That's my biggest fear. So we're doing good so far.
So when you think about storytelling, because I I'll speak for myself and not for my audience. Uh, my brain, I I want to say doesn't naturally think of a story, but I tell a ton of stories, but I don't necessarily. I think when I transition from human being talking to my friends to creating content, you get that like, well, I don't know what to do, right? And so it's really silly. It's really
I
silly when you
know.
like step back and you look at it from a professional standpoint. You're like, this is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
you know how to tell a story. You just told me a story yesterday, but as from the entrepreneurial standpoint, how do I break that disconnect of like, it's really not that different from talking to my friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great question and something that I was like keeping in mind as I was recording my content the other day, because like this exact thing was kind of going through my brain of how do I make it not feel like I'm up here creating a TikTok video and talking to the people,
Yeah.
to like feeling more relaxed, having a conversation. And I was like, okay, literally what went through my brain as I was saying this was, how would I say this to my client? If we were on a coaching call and we were talking and I was trying to explain this concept to her, how would I talk about it?
Mm.
Like, how would I explain this story? And that automatically switched my brain back from like, I'm on stage to I'm not on stage, I'm just sharing with a person. So
Yeah.
I think like it can just be as simple as that, like one little switch where now instead of being self-conscious about you, you're focused on like the person that you're really trying to help and explain it to. It kind of gets that like feeling of being in the spotlight off of you so that you can just do what you do best.
I appreciate that. It's taken me so long to get away from that. I I do these sprints where I like focus on a topic for about a quarter. I
Yep.
I probably should do longer, but I try to go deep dive into a topic for about 90 days. And one of mine was story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still something I have to revisit and like refocus on because it doesn't come naturally to me in the standpoint of like, how do I do this more effectively on a day to day basis?
Right.
Uh, but I definitely can see this idea of like thinking more along, how would I communicate this to a client? How would I communicate this to a friend? How would I
Right.
communicate this to my sibling?
Yeah.
Really changing your focus of I'm creating a TikTok to I'm sharing this with insert this person. So let's you have something else interesting on your website, and I don't think
Okay.
I've seen anything. I don't think I've seen anything talk about it on your TikToks yet. So we're gonna talk about it now.
Yes.
Enneagram. So you're a
Oh,
one, right?
I'm a one. A
Yeah,
one with a
I'm an eight.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
eight wing seven. Uh,
Okay.
do you use and to clarify for anybody that's listening right now, Enneagram is a personality assessment. I highly recommend that you take it. There are tons of free assessments out there. I will link a website that has not just Enneagram, but tons of other assessments that you can take, including love languages, Myers Briggs, and tons of other stuff. Uh, I'm not affiliated with this company, by the way, everybody. It's just a site that I use. I think they're cool. You gotta tell people that. Like, this is not an affiliate link. It is just a
Don't
free
worry, guys.
resource. Yeah. Do you use Enneagram in the work that you do with your clients?
Honestly, I don't. I use it just to understand myself.
Okay.
Because I'm like fascinated by all of those personality tests and all that stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
the more that I can understand about like myself, the more that like I don't shame myself in comparing myself to someone else. So I like know as an Enneagram 1, like I am a rule follower. Like
Yep.
I just want to do everything right and perfect. And, if I shouldn't be doing it this way, then, that's not the way I'm going to do it. But that's also helped me because when I know that I'm a rule follower and I know that like I want to do it the right way or the good way,
Yeah.
I'm going to leverage that myself in my business. That's why I have a business coach. That's why I just finished 13 months of working with a health coach. Like I
Yep.
have a relationship coach because I know that having someone or something outside of myself to help hold me accountable is what I need. And instead of judging that as like a weakness of my personality that I have an external locus of control, and I can't just do this all myself without someone outside of me, I'm going to look at how I can, leverage the things that may be perceived as weaknesses to
Yeah.
create the results that I want.
Mm. I appreciate you saying that. I would say we share some similarities there in this idea of like really looking at the personality assessments as being a way to understand ourselves and in proxy understanding others, right? The better understanding we have of ourselves, the easier it is to understand other people. Um, and the more that it's very similar to you, the more I focus on like, what does this mean for me in actuality? Uh, and so for everyone, an 8, I laugh because I have friends that they love Enneagram. That's actually how I ended up taking it. I worked for an organization that was a civil service organization, and one of the classroom therapists, she's all about Enneagrams, and
Mm.
we used to office together. And she would ask me for like 3 months, what's your number? What's your number? What's your number? And I was like, I don't know. And finally, she was like, we're gonna take this. We're gonna take this. And so we sat down and took it together because she was like, I need to know. Uh, but an 8 is, it's a fighter, right?
Mm.
Which is so interesting because I never. It's funny how sometimes it takes you talking to somebody else in order to discover something about yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
never really thought about why my content around like the things that you know you need the shit you don't want to hear content would do so well for me. But it would make sense if you think about it like on an Enneagram standpoint.
Right.
It's like I'm standing up for what I believe. This is the stuff you don't want to hear, but it's the stuff that you need to hear, right?
Right.
So that's funny. I'm gonna have to now, Molly. Now I'm gonna have to ponder this. I'm gonna go
Well,
off somewhere and ponder it.
I think, and this is like a lot of like the magic of like I think working with clients is like that to me, okay, because that's energetically like who you are. So it would make sense that naturally like that would come out of you as
Yeah,
the content that you want to create. But a lot of people like aren't really sure like where that lies within them and then how to bring that out. So it's kind of
yeah,
like if you know that like you're the disruptor and like that's your role and you've come in, well then it's gonna not feel as exhausting to you to go out and be like, let's mess some people up right now and say like drop a bomb in the middle of this room and see what happens. Where like for me, I'm like, oh god, we can't upset people. I'm a one with a two wing, so I'm like, follow the rules and love everyone. I can't do that. So it's like it's what that has to look like for you, because again that authenticity of like this is who I am, what I believe in, and how I want to show up in the world in a way that feels authentic to me and isn't like draining or overwhelming, that is really like when your content's going to do well.
yeah. Yeah, I think the trouble is like, and folks, I don't want to get too deep into the Enneagram, but I have to for this next piece because I think the trouble that I struggle with the whole like dropping bombs is because I said before that I'm a 7. I'm a 9 wing, which is like I want to live a peaceful life. So I'm just emotionally confused.
You want to like disrupt, drop the bomb so that afterwards we can just put everything back together in a really beautiful way.
I guess so. I guess so. I don't know what I want. Apparently,
Means to an end for you. I understand that.
absolutely. So when we think about storytelling, what what roles do you believe that emotion has in storytelling, and how does like harnessing that help build your brand affinity or the connection that people have with your brand?
So, like, one of the most powerful things that you can do in your content is to describe how someone is feeling better than they can describe it themselves. So, there are people that I have worked with and just immediately, like, stumbled across on a podcast or something like that and was
Yeah.
like, this person is in my head. It's like they know me. And when I'm struggling to like put words to feelings that I have, when your audience is, it's so comforting to have someone else be able to kind of do that for you, because you feel like, A, I'm not alone. B, someone understands exactly what I'm going through. Therefore, they must have the solution to this, because they wouldn't know exactly how I was feeling if they couldn't then, give me some way out of this dilemma that I'm struggling with. So, especially, like, depending on the level of kind of like warmth of your customer, if you have someone who is like so problem aware, like knows exactly like what their problem is, but they don't know how to solve it, and you come in and you're like, you're feeling like this is what you're struggling with, this is why you're struggling with it, here's how I can help you. They're like, oh my God, you're psychic, you know exactly where I am. So that is so powerful, because essentially it's just human connection, and that's all we want. We all want to be seen, we all want to be understood. And so when you do that in your marketing, people are going to feel like they connect with you. So you
Yeah.
can use story to then do that, where you either are using yourself or past clients and talking about the journey that someone goes on through working with you, using your product or service, whatever it is, and how they've been able to transform into kind of that after picture. So, people come to you, you're describing exactly where they are. They haven't told you, but you just know. They're like, oh my gosh. And then you're like, yeah, don't stress about it. Like, we can help you transform into this other version of who you want to be, someone that doesn't have this problem. And so they're going to be more apt to want to work with you, to trust you, if you can accurately describe that, provide a very like simple to follow solution, meaning that they understand how you get them to that transformation, how you do it, and they don't feel overwhelmed by it. Then they're going to want to work with you, because you get them, you understand them, and you can use story as a way to illustrate that transformation and kind of connect with them on the emotional level for both the before and helping them see the after, and imagining how that's going to feel.
Mm, I love that. I love that. Well, as we kind of wind down here a bit, there are two questions. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot this. If you're still watching and you have not picked this up, I did meet Mollie on TikTok. So what that means for you, do me a favor, comment down below what number guest she is that's from TikTok, and then make sure you join our newsletter so that we can enter you to a drawing so that you can win a free Yeti Blue microphone. I apologize it's so late in the show. I usually tell you earlier in the show, but I got so excited about talking to Mollie that I totally forgot. So there are two questions that I have for you. The last one is, if there was one thing that someone watching or listening to this could take away from it, what would you say that the most important thing is about this conversation today?
What's coming up for me is the idea that you really need to figure out who you are, like where you want to plant your flag,
Yeah.
what naturally comes out of you in terms of your messaging and what you want to do. And I think it's funny, because when there are things like that that come up for me, it's like they just, the message keeps coming from different places and different things. So when I feel like I need to say it, it's probably because someone needs to hear it. So there's, if you feel like you are struggling with, what is my thing? How do I talk about the thing I want to talk about while also connecting with my clients and serving them?
Yep.
You know, understanding where you stand on important issues that affect your clients, and then how you can then create content that's going to kind of show them where you stand and create connection, I think could be a game changer for people. But it's challenging when there's so much of us in the way, that we like some good idea will come up and we'll be like, oh no, not that one. Or like something else will come up and we'll be like, well, I can't say that, and it's like we have all these voices when we know what we should do, and we're just like resisting the urge to do it because we're just
Yeah.
like, oh well, I don't know about this. So I think really like being brave, doing the work to figure out what that is, like that will be the thing that can change your business.
Yeah, I love that. Number one, planting their flag, but then also you said this idea about being brave, having the courage to do the stuff that you know you're supposed to do, but you keep getting in your own way. It's funny because it's this idea of like you have to add more you, but you got to get out of your own way to do it, right? So, uh, the second question I have for you is, what are some books or YouTube channels that you watch to grow as a marketing professional?
So I have like gone through, so I mean I have so many books in my like to be read pile that are half read. So right now I'm kind of like going in a more like sales direction because I'm always
Okay.
trying to look at, like, where are my weaknesses, like
Yep.
where do I need to like beef stuff up. um I've got to, like, you know what, I want to look through my Audible because that will literally tell you, because I'm too ADD to like sit in one place and actually like read a book the
Oh my God.
entire time. So
Yeah.
instead, I look at like, if I'm walking, what can I read?
Yeah.
One book that I really read that's super super good was called The Mountain Is You.
Okay.
It's more of like a personal development book, but it was like just so, every time I'm like, oh my god, like just mic drop every single moment. That was really really good. Hook Point by Brendan Kane.
Yes.
I read Purple Cow, How
Okay.
to Write Copy That Sells, like all of those kind of ones. In terms of podcasts, I love Rachel Peterson. She's my mentor, so
Okay.
she's got a great podcast. I like listen to James Wedmore. What were some of the other ones I was listening to? I'm super like all over the place with that kind of stuff. So if I stumble across someone, I'm gonna like binge and then move on. That's like
Yes.
my, I've got to like think back because I'm like, who am I into right now? Because that wasn't who I was into 6 months ago. You know?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, I'll have moments where I'm all into like Christo, and then
Yeah,
like I won't watch the Future Channel for like 6, 7 months,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
something will come up, and I'm like, yeah, I want to
Right
learn more
there.
about color theory, and then I'll go back to Christo and I'll binge some of his content, and kind of same thing. Like, there are so many books that are on my bookshelf, even though like I don't, kind of like you said, the idea that I actually prefer audio books.
Mm,
There's something about having a physical book in my hand that I
yeah,
feel like I absorb the information better. So then I still end up buying the book. So I have like 2 or 3 copies of the
yeah.
same book, audio, digital, and hard copy. It's absurd, but it's what gets it done. So, well, that is a wrap for today's episode of Marketing Stuff. I hope that today was helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments about this video, feel free to send us a message over on Facebook at Marketing Stuff Podcast, or if you are watching on YouTube, drop your questions in the comments. We will respond to every single comment that comes along. We do ask for a little bit of grace, but I try to get to them within a 48-hour period. We can't wait for you to join us again on the next episode, where we keep bringing you the latest and greatest in marketing and bringing in guests to help us out to wrap our minds around this marketing stuff. Outside of that, stay out here winning, y'all.